Welcome to the Tracing SQL video. Sometimes you just need to know what's happening behind the scenes. We have our Linux machine hosting HANA on the right and our Windows machine on the left. Bob will show us how to turn on the traces for a particular set of tables and for particular statements using HANA Studio. He will then use the FTP tool to look at traces remotely. You can delete the generated traces file at any time and it will get recreated automatically. Let's see this in action with Bob.
In this video, we're going to examine the concept of SQL tracing our HANA server using the SAP HANA Studio. So to demonstrate this, I'm going to log into my SAP HANA Studio and I'm going to make sure that the administration console is selected as our perspective. So again, I can just click here and select my other perspective, which is the administration console. So the first thing we need to do is turn it on. So if I right click and go to administration, the last tab will show you your trace configuration. This is where you can turn on all your log files to trace any SQL statements going to your database. If I edit this, I can then say I want to make it active. So firstly, we have the choice of trace level. So we can trace only errors, but in this demo, I'm going to trace everything with all results. I'm going to specify that the file is created in the data is created in a file called Bob SQL Trace, just so we know that these files have been newly created. We can then choose to not filter on a user or filter on a specific user. So I'm going to actually not filter on any user, but I'm going to trace a specific object. Here you can see a calculation view has been traced, but let's say I only want to trace my DIM customer table. So I'm not bothered about any other table, I only want to trace my DIM customer table. I'm going to select it and delete the other calculation view. We can then choose what we want to trace, so I can choose I want to trace DML, DDL, anything. I'm going to leave all of these selected. So next we click finish and we should now start tracing. It will say active. Now those files are located in a specific place on the server. To find out where those files are, we can log in to FileZilla to our Linux box. So I'm going to connect to my HDB to my Linux server. Within your instance and server name, you will have a folder which is basically your machine name. And within that folder, you will have a folder called trace. So this is where we should start seeing our traces, and you can see now we're tracing. We're tracing now because I said trace any single message. Again, you should be able to open this just with WordPad or Notepad. So this is the trace now. So if I just word wrap, you can see the trace here. Okay? So to demonstrate how it works, what I'm going to do is I'm going to open it, I'm going to actually run a select statement. So if I go back to my administration console, I'm going to go into my SQL editor. And remember we said we only wanted to log our DIM customer table. So I'm just going to do a select statement of some of the other tables. So if I go to my STS database, go to my tables, I'm firstly going to select the DIM period table. So there we've done a select statement on the DIM period table. If I go back to my trace, I can look at the log. It's actually not changed for a minute. If I open this up or view or edit it, we can see that the trace really hasn't changed. But now what I'm going to do is I'm going to run a select statement on the relevant table. Just to make sure. So if I scroll down, we can see that we don't really have any SQL statement to do with that table. Now I'm going to run a select statement on the DIM customer table. So I'm going to go back. I'm going to change this table to DIM customer. That is the table that we said that we want to trace. We've run a select statement on that table, So now when we go back to the server and we refresh, so I'm going to go up a level and down a level. Now if I open up the file, and we scroll down, here you can see we're tracing that table. These are actually our customers here. So if I try and find one specific one, here we go. This is a list of customers with their specific location. Because again, we said that we wanted to trace the customer table, and if I scroll above, you won't see any dimension period data because we ignored that in our trace. Again, that can be confirmed if I go back into the administration console, go to the administration piece, the trace configuration, edit the SQL trace, and you can see here we're only logging the DIM customer table. One last note, it's very important to turn off the trace if you don't really need it, because it will actually slow your results down. So it's a good idea to make sure that all your traces are switched off if you're not using them. So that's a very simple way to run a trace on any table or any object within your HANA system using the SAP HANA Studio.